Um, in this first chapter, I want to talk about of what inspired this image of San Juan de Dios. There are many tutorials in internet of great quality, and while watching them, I always wanted to find one that could explain this process in particular, on how the artist inspires himself, from where the ideas come from, or maybe where he handles with the elements for creativity, and was something that I always wanted to hear from my favorite artist. From the internet or from big studios, but I really never found it. That's why I think it's important for me to explain and try to help you in this inspirational process. The first thing I want to share is how I came up with this idea. Where did the inspiration came from? Where I found the small details and how this image formed inside my head. And the story is simple. I just wanted to make a 3D image and wasn't sure on what exactly I wanted. I was stuck for a while, chewing on doing this or doing that. There were things that I kind of liked it, but I didn't really felt convinced about them. One day, just like any other, I found myself in a fruit market, thing that it's very common here in my country, that it's Mexico by the way, and suddenly I look around and realize where I was and the potential that a place like this had to be represented on 3D. There was an amazing richness in the colors, a great variety in the shapes, on textures, on sensations, in the light, the people, and immediately it caught myself, and I knew that that was what I wanted to create. I really liked the idea a lot because of what I said, and because there also was an implicit folklore value that really adds a lot to the image, so it could be recognized. There are some tips that I'd like to share about the process and how I develop it. This doesn't mean that this is a set of rules that you have to follow just because I said them, because I don't have the absolute truth on what I'll be telling you in this series of videos. I'm just throwing advices that worked on me, and I hope you find them useful. The first thing I'd like to share is about the actual creation process. It's you have to find a true inspiration. I've seen many coworkers, many of my students that start a project and it never gets done. It never gets finished. I think a big issue with this is that they don't find a really big inspiration or something that really fulfills them. Because creating an image like this requires a lot of effort, requires a lot of dedication, requires us to put a lot of our free time on it. I'm pretty sure that most of you who are watching these tutorials are passionate about 3D and CGI, but you have to take the next step on the moment you decide to start with a piece of art that will speak for yourself. Why? Because you have to take care of a lot of details. You have to put a lot of time on it, as I said before, and dedication too. So if you don't have a clear goal on what to do, or is not that fulfilling and it lacks of that motivation to keep you going, I almost bet that in some part of the process you'll get bored, you'll leave it in a backup hard drive, or you just leave it like that and think, it looks good, I'll leave it there. And the second advice I like to share is that you should always look in a project to look for a challenge. Um, uh, what is it like to set a challenge? For me in this image, the challenges were how to position all the fruits, to have so many objects in the scene, to handle a multi-million polygon file, to have huge amount of textures, and these were my challenges. I didn't knew how to solve it. I started the scene without knowing many things, and this forced me to learn a lot of others. And this is the most satisfactory process of creating this image. Of course, the knowledge that brings and the satisfaction, the results of a long process of frustration, of research, of learning, and a lot of other things. It's just great. I think that each time you are working on any project, you must set a new challenge and try to make something you didn't knew. The third advice I want to share with you is closely related with the first one. Once you have an idea to which you feel passionate about and makes you keep going, it's very important to have a clear idea. I don't want to mix you up a lot with that word. I'll explain it later. But it's vital to have a clear idea in your mind of what we want to achieve or what you want to achieve. Why? Because the ideas always they always tend to strike us like a flash or sparkles inside the head, and even that the idea is not precise, we know in our subconscious that well, we know what we want, and that's the clearness I am referring. It doesn't mean you have to have a perfectly drawn image inside your brain, but but you should have a hint or a feeling inside of you that tells you what to do and what is the goal. That's what I refer with a clear idea. For example, in this image, I had that flash in my head that I wanted something colorful. I wanted something backlighted with a high intensity on the exterior, with a big sunlight outside and darkness inside a warehouse, and with some lights saturating the fruits, defining very well their shapes and giving them a lot of color. And I have a clear image of it. I really wasn't precisely saying how the composition will be and what fruits will be there, but something like that was floating in my mind. And it's very important because it's the way to go, the line. We're not sure how we're going to make it, but it's very important to define it. We can change it, but we have to be very faithful to that idea in our heads. This next advice, I've heard it a lot of times, and it was told me by artists that have been in the industry for a long time, or that work in very huge studios. And the advice is to get as many references as possible. At some point, we can get lost in the process, and what I'm talking about is that having a clear idea of that I wanted a warehouse, that I have some fruits and a lot of things, and etc. And I think in my head that I have the ideas, that I have the references, that I have some things very clear. But once you start researching for that of images in internet, you realize that your ideas can be very simple, and that you can enrich with the references what you already have in your mind. This actually happened to me. Later on, I'll show you where much of the ideas come from. But before we get into that, I would like to tell you about the last advice I want to give you. And it's very related with having references from internet or from books or whatever you get them. And the advice is to always compare yourself with an artist that you think is better than you. Or that it's someone that you really admire, that is your way to go. Don't be afraid to compare yourself with these guys. What I say is have the guts to open an image of the studio or the people you like and one of yours too, side by side. Once you have them side by side, start comparing what's lacking in your image and what strong things you have in the image of your like. Sometimes it's very hard. Certainly, that part of your brain doesn't want to do this. It's hard, but it's the only way you can realize where you're standing as an artist, and of course, what are our weaknesses and what we need to work a little bit more. And as they say long time ago in the war, if you don't know what are your weaknesses, you'll never know what are your strengths. It has been very useful for me and all over my career. And mostly the last part of my career, I have taken this very seriously. And I've compared myself with artists that are the best of the world. And I put my image side by side with them and I try to see what's missing on my artist skills. So that way I can get the level I want. These two advices are very linked. Remember, always have references if you're going to make a market. Start looking for markets, for reference for markets, for fruits and everything. And everything like markets, warehouses, folklore, and everything. And well, that advice is also very related to the way that you should try to look for images that have been done earlier that look like yours. It's obvious that you won't find an exact image, but it's a very close approximation of what you might be looking for. And that's a very interesting starting point so you can get a clearer view of what you're aiming for. Well, now I'm going to show you a few of the hundreds references I've been gathering from internet for this piece. And you'll notice how they are coherent with the image of San Juan de Dios. I searched for a lot of market images, and I've noticed that many of the markets in the east are very close, looking like here in Mexico, and they helped me a lot. At the beginning, I really didn't have any clear idea of what fruits I will be using, or how I'm gonna put them. And I would love to point this out because with this scene, I didn't want to make a sketch or or a Photoshop painting. I really wanted to make it on the go. I wanted to assemble this image with the ideas that came out from the actual references. And so I started a layout, a frame for putting those ideas that came from internet. I'm not saying that this is the best way to work, but in my case, it came out pretty well. And why not? I might use it or do it again in my future images. So don't worry, we'll try to look at this process on future videos. Many of the images I really like them a lot because of the photographic aesthetics that had each. My main goal was to create an image that could represent my artistic values. And also, of course, I wanted to make that the viewer feels what I wanted to show, what I wanted to express. I wasn't looking for a photoreal image. There are some areas that might look photoreal, but I was trying to make an image that could satisfy myself, and also an image that could tell a story to the viewer. That was my main goal, not to create a photoreal image. And these images are, of course, are photoreal, but they also show other things. I was looking for a aesthetic value, a photographic value, and all these images helped me a lot in the process to define these elements in the image. Let's take a look at other images. I have a lot of images like this one. This one is very helpful for defining the fruits, which fruits are going to be in the scene, and also how they're going to be positioned in the scene, what kind of boxes they use, and also they gave me a very clear idea on how the fruits reacted to light and the textures and how they look under certain conditions. There was a part in the inspiration and development process in which I was very doubtful on putting humans or even silhouettes of them. At the end, I decided not to use them. It was a kind of complex process that came in my head. But I really thought that the image could express more without humans. In my personal point of view, there are so many things in the scene that I thought that human would be too much, and that's just my opinion. But for me, was too much. Now, these kind of images were very helpful because it helped me define how much chaos I wanted in my scene. It also helped me to define props, the style of the warehouse, and in this kind of image, you can see that there are humans, but there's also very messy things here going around. And these images really helped me to define how far I wanted to be in the chaos area. Now these other kind of images really inspired me on the colors, on the props, on the folklore mainly. While I was looking at these images, I really realized that my images in my head were very simple, and that I had to put more and more elements so that I can put the spectator in a better situation and better explaining where they stand in the image. Now these kind of images gave me a very clear idea on the exposure that I have to use on my camera, on my virtual camera. I still didn't define how obscure, how dark, or how overexposed the image will be. And of course, these kind of images give me how far I could push the illumination, the lighting. So it was very useful. These other kind of images give me a very good orientation on what kind of props I would be using. Like this one, well, most of the racks in the scene are taken from these references, and also help me a lot to define shaders and textures. Of course, they are a little bit modified, but it's the starting point for my scene of the market. Now, this image is pretty obvious what I found here and what I use it for, or why I use it as a reference. And also it's very important this image because at some point of the process I realized that I didn't have a unique object inside my scene. And it really became very important for me because most of the objects, well, all of the objects in my scene are cloned or duplicated in somewhere. And the only unique object I have in my scene is this scale. And it was very nice because I really liked how the light was reflected in the glass and how the material was worn because of the use of it, and the decision was taken very fast that this was my unique object in the scene. Maybe if I didn't look for more references, I haven't found this image and I wouldn't have this particular object in my scene. That's why I'm insisting that it's vital. It's very important to have a huge amount of references for starting your scenes. There are many other scenes that I was very inspired by, just like this one. It never really crossed my mind that I would put one of these dolls in my image. But at the moment I saw this image, I said, "Hey, that has to be inside my image." And again, if I didn't have these references, I would never found this thing. Now, one important thing here is that this doll is not a unique object because it would be sharing with the scale, so it's duplicated. Someone in a forum asked why I used two dolls, and well, that's the answer: to not take the uniqueness of the scale out. And well, I hope all that I've said could help you direct your inspiration process. And so let's move on to the next video. Thank you.